The streets are talking. You are now listening to The Box Out, Tri-State area basketball talk at its best. And now your hosts, Kahlil Thomas and Jason Cordner. Let's get it.
From NJ to BK and the world, this is The Box Out in a Just Hoop Talk YouTube channel. My name is Kahlil Thomas. Joining me in just a few minutes will be Jason Cordner from Brooklyn. We have to start, and it's sad to say. It is sad to talk about. It is a sad topic to bring up. The demise of the New York Knicks. We have to start with that, and we really have to kind of give a post-mortem of the Knicks season as I bring in Jason Cordner. Jay, what's popping?
Not much. As you mentioned, the post-mortem, it does bring me joy knowing that the Lakers are home with us.
We're going to get to them in a second. Trust me, we're going to get to them in a second. Before we start talking about, I want to play what Michael Kay said on his radio show here in New York City, New York, New Jersey area, whatever, about the New York Knicks and maybe how this might have been a silver lining, them losing in the first round to the Hawks. So here's Michael Kay on the Michael Kay Show on ESPN 98.7 and the Yes Network.
The Knicks lost to the Hawks, while it hurts now, could be a blessing in disguise because it's not going to give anybody false hope. The Hawks have been put together, and the way they were put together, they surrounded who they felt was a superstar with really serviceable, good role players that are not too old. Now, a lot of the Knicks role players, a little up there in years. So this playoff series showed us Julius Randle is a really good player. But does he fall under the heading of great player? I felt that if they would have won last night and then forced a Game 6 in Atlanta and then lost in Atlanta, I would have felt a lot better about the season. I don't feel as good about the season because losing in such a docile manner to the Hawks, it just really deflated me. And I don't want to take away the 41 wins. I don't want to, because what they did was they reestablished how important Knick basketball is to the city, and they gave Knick fans reasons to cheer and believe. And the days of the desert are over. But now we know that there's still a lot of climbing to do. This is not the beginning, if you stay and stand pat, of a championship team. It's simply not. The players aren't good enough. And the best player on the team showed that he's not good enough at this point. And he's not a spring chicken. He's going to be 27 years old. So he's not like R.J. Barrett. You go, well, he's 20. Still has a lot to grow. No. Julius Randle should be entering his prime years. So he showed in his first time on the playoff stage, not good. He shot under 30% from 2-point. So the last couple of games, the statistics weren't terrible. The first three they were. The last two they weren't, but it didn't lead to anything. And also, they depended way too much on a 32-year-old Derrick Rose who's been banged up. They played him too many minutes, and he had no spring in his step yesterday at all and couldn't contribute. So the Knicks lost in 5 games. And, yeah, it does take some of the luster away from 41 and 31. Maybe for Knicks fans it doesn't, but it does for me because I'm looking at it in a stark, realistic way that there's still a lot of heavy lifting left to do.
All right, so that was Michael Kay. First and foremost, I think the big question, and I spoke to my dad after the series was over. He's like, "You and Jason got to talk about how nobody giving the Knicks love. Everybody just crapping on them. Does this series take away from their season? Because let's be honest, they won 41 games. They weren't supposed to touch 25 wins, let alone 41. Does this really taint the season that they had?"
I want to say no. I want to say, if anything, it shows you how much they overachieved and outperformed the talent that they had. Because going into the season, the Hawks, he's right. Michael Kay is absolutely right. The Hawks built a team around Trae Young, and they were projected to be a top 6 seed in the East. And they kind of lacklustered out the gate, but then Nate McMillan came along and helped motivate them to the 5th seed. So I think talent-wise, Atlanta had more talent. I think you can look at the Eastern Conference. Indiana had more talent. Washington had more talent. I mean, there were so many teams ahead of Toronto had more talent. So I definitely think the Knicks overachieved. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on what happened. It's one of those situations where we found out in the playoffs, not only does everybody play hard, but you can scheme on somebody. And the Hawks was the first one to scheme on Randall. So I think, and they had the size. So it was a combination of, it was the perfect matchup for them, where they knew he dominated them in the regular season. And now when you're seeing somebody, every other night, it's easy to scheme on them. So I'm not really knocking the Knicks what happened. I think with anything, like I told you before, it's a calling card. I think Randall's not the number one. I told you I wouldn't max him out just yet. He's gonna have to prove one more year to me that he's a legit, all-star. I think this is a calling card to any disgruntled player. Like I told you last week, Death Row, any disgruntled players that want to come play in the Mecca and know that this is a city that's gonna get behind you, know that this is a new regime that's gonna spend money to build talent around you, come to the Knicks. So I definitely think it's more of a calling card than a unsuccessful season.
Yeah, and I think I hate making excuses, but the excuse of when we played Atlanta this year, they didn't have anybody. I think that's a legit excuse. I feel like Bogdanovich was out, Collins missed the game. I think DeAndre Hunter missed some games. So I feel like you really didn't see the full Atlanta team the whole season. So for scouting purposes, it wouldn't work because we didn't know what Bogdanovich was going to do. We didn't know what DeAndre Hunter was going to bring to the table playing with Trey. You didn't see John Collins for that one game. So I feel like Atlanta not having their guys in the regular season was kind of a plus for them and a really big minus for us. Regarding the future, and you mentioned you wouldn't give Randall the max yet. You would take him up on the offer. I think it's like $19 or $20 million next year.
Yep.
I agree with you. But here's the question now. You're going to have about $50 million, give or take, in cap space. The free agent market, and there was a good article in The Athletic about how the free agent market's kind of weak this year. You have a Chris Paul. I know we've talked about Lonzo Ball. You have a Kyle Lowry going out there. You have options. Mike Conley, he's hurt. He's going to be a free agent. Where do the Knicks go? Because I know someone on Facebook earlier said CJ McCollum would be a good player, be a little cheaper. I know Dame, we'll talk about the Dame little situation a little bit later. Where do you go with that cap space? Do you just kind of run it back? Do you try to add pieces to what you have already? Or do you just go all out for, hey, we need a star, we'll trade for one?
I think you make sure you keep your assets and acquire new assets along the way because, like I told you before, I have that feeling that it's like maybe not Dame, but I definitely think Zion's coming in a couple of years. I definitely keeping the Zion hope alive. I think other players might become available. It all depends how things like. We don't know if Kawhi loses tonight. If you thought LeBron caught heat today, the heat that Kawhi is going to get tomorrow on talk radio is going to be even that much worse because of his decision to go back home to LA, where he could have stayed in Toronto and been a made man. So I think that's a domino that might fall down the line. So I definitely think we got to stay pat and watch what's happening. I would bring back Rose, even though I think the Lakers and other teams are going to go after him because he's a veteran point guard and they saw what he gave him this year. Other than that, I'll try to. We've been high on Bullock and Burke. Maybe not so much Bullock, but definitely Burke. I'll try to bring back and get cheap parts. I mean, I'm not going after a shooter. I'm not going after anyone who can't shoot, pretty much. So we'll see how that. Unless it's Lonzo. Lonzo's the only non-shooter I want because he's a playmaker.
Well, it's funny because I feel like that was the detriment of the team in that series against Atlanta was a lack of scoring. Alec Burks had his games. Derrick Rose, driving to the basket. But we talked about outside shooting. Besides Alec Burks' first game, that game one, you really didn't see it. It was just kind of on and off type of shooting nights they were having. You need a scorer. You need a shooter. You need someone who, one, can make their baskets when they have wide open shots. But two, you need someone that can take the game over. Randall showed that he can't do that. Randall's not one of those guys that can take a game over. He just can't. And Atlanta exposed Julius Randle in this series to the point where, he has to go back to the lab and I got to change this up a little bit. This ain't going to work. You have to have that player who can take over. I think you gotta. And I'm never one to say this. I'm never one to want to do this, but I almost feel like You got 41 wins with this squad. You might want to push your chips all in and go, we're getting Dame. Or we're going to go after a big star, a disgruntled star, or in free agency if someone opts out. I feel like you almost have to do that because you won 41 games with this roster that is, as a Knicks fan, I can say this, it's flawed.
Mm-hmm.
If you have something else, I mean, this is a 50-win team, easy, with that superstar, with that number one. We don't have a number one. G.J. McCollum's not number one to do that. I feel like you got to get a one option here.
But it's good to know the Knicks have the option and they have the assets. Like Obi showed flashes in the playoff. He'll be perfect in another situation. It's just unfortunate that he's playing behind Randall. IQ showed hope. RJ still got to work in this game, but he showed a little flashes here and there. So they definitely have a young core that they can ship out. Hey, I mean, hate to say it, those guys are not going to be retiring Knicks anytime soon. So
no.
I definitely see that, again, if this is a scrum to play out there, if this is a move that needs to be made, we have assets now, and we have a management team that's not going to go all in, kind of like how they did with Melo a couple of years ago and trade everybody.
Well, I think the difference more so now is, like you said, we have better assets. We don't have to trade 7 players for Carmelo and some crab sticks. Like we can,
and we have picks. And we have
I think the picks are an important one because we have so many picks. Where it's like, guys, listen, you can take 2 of our first rounders, and we still got our first round anyway. Take 2, whatever. We don't care. Take the Clippers 1 because the Clippers are going to be in purgatory eventually soon. Take the Mavericks 1, doesn't matter. Take what you want because we still have ours no matter what. Mm-hmm. And if you have a team stacked enough, you may not even need them. I think if those picks are late in the first round, those are role players. So I feel like there's a lot of different ways they can go here. But I really do think the future's bright for the Knicks, and I am tired of people just shitting on them for no reason. Yeah, you lost 4-1. We get it. It was a tough series. I know you and I spoke. I wasn't pissed. I was just like, I was hurt, and I was like,
we got embarrassed.
We did.
I was more so hurt about the effort to stop Trae Young. Like they couldn't think of anything. Nothing worked.
No, not one adjustment. It's like even try. Like Tibbs is like, it is what it is. Just let him go. You talk about the Lakers. We're talking about the Lakers now. Lakers knocked out the first round. Woo. Devin Booker put it on him, put in that work. LeBron out in the first round for the first time in his long storied career. And of course, I got to go to our man Stephen A. Smith for his thoughts on the Lakers being out in the first round.
Phoenix Suns validated that, A, because of how DeAndre Ayton played consistently throughout the series, B, because of the coaching that we witnessed and how the Lakers' suspect shooting was exposed, C, because of Devin Booker's star status, because this brother is real and he's bona fide, and Anthony Davis wasn't going to do much to negate that unless he was guarding Devin Booker outside of the three-point line, which I don't think would have happened. And, of course, the leadership of CP3. Remember, he's been injured in this series, too. If he didn't get injured and Anthony Davis didn't get injured, that's where we get the 7-game series for. But I'll also tell you what also went wrong with the Los Angeles Lakers, other than Anthony Davis's injuries, Max. How about Rob Pelinka and Frank Vogel? How about Rob Pelinka? You lose Rajon Rondo. You let him walk away and sign a 2-year, $15 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks. How about losing Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee? Since you knew you were going to have to play big boy basketball, and they're the ones who helped Anthony Davis stay healthy last year because he wasn't asked to do but so much on the interior because you had those big bodies that the Lakers threw at people last year. How about that with the Rondo, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee being gone? And how about Frank Vogel somehow, some way not figuring out that the durability of Anthony Davis was always historically a question mark, and you acquired a 6th man of the year at the time in Montrezl Harrell, and somehow, some way, he's only averaging 6 minutes per game in this series heading into last night. You didn't figure out how you were going to need to utilize him. I think those things played a significant role in what happened to the Lakers last night.
All right, so that's Stephen A. Smith on First Take this morning. Listen, I agree with them. I feel like the team that they had last year in the bubble, they could have run it back. And I feel like, listen, Rondo's contract, 2 years, $15 million wasn't crazy. Dwight Howard probably wasn't trying to break the bank to come back. I feel like they won the championship. They got their ring and said, we can do this with other pieces, like Andre Drummond, Montrezl Harrell. Yep. And it didn't work. So At this point, where do the Lakers go from here now?
I think the Lakers are. You're talking about the Knicks have at least have hope for a future and brighter skies. I think the Lakers are done. I think LeBron is not going back to the. I don't think he's going back to the finals. I think he's done unless he goes to another team. I think Anthony Davis would, because New Orleans is like before Zion. New Orleans was like Utah. We never saw them on television, but we didn't know he was always hurt. A couple of times they made decent playoff runs, but AD got hurt, and I think AD, we forgot how prone to injuries he is. And another blessing that we pretty much forgot about is that the bubble they took a 4-month break. So I don't even know if they would have won the championship last year if we would continue on a normal trajectory where I think the Clippers might have really had them. So it's one of those situations where I think the Lakers got lucky. They got that one ring. I don't think they're getting another one anytime soon. I think this roster is flawed. They can make adjustments, but they're not going to get any big-time player or any, like you said, the free agent market is kind of weak, and I don't think anybody's clamoring to go help LeBron at this stage. I think last night showed that it's a change in the guard in the NBA. I think the young guys are here. They're taking over. Booker's here, Trae Young's here, Mitchell's here. If you want to put Embiid in there, they're here. Giannis, I think it's their league now, and LeBron is delegated to a role player.
Yeah, and you just saw it. AD tried to play last night. And he got about 4 or 5 minutes in, and he's like, "Nah, I'm out." Like he shouldn't have been bothered. But we talk about their role players, and Rondo, Dwight Howard. Those are two guys that what Rondo brings to the table. Dwight Howard.
He wanted to come back, but they went after
exactly.
They went after Montreal first.
Exactly, and it's. You go from that to Andre Drummond, who never looked comfortable.
Nope. To
Kyle Kuzma, who is hot, cold all the time. To Tucker, who you don't know. Alex Caruso, who everyone loves, not really doing much. I feel like the role was such a huge drop-off where people were actually saying, like, when LeBron and AD were hurt, it was helping them. Because I'm like, oh my God. These guys are getting valuable time for the playoffs. And, Caruso's playing 25, 30 minutes. And Kuzma is like leading the team. It didn't work. And I said it before, their schedule at that point was very, 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 very weak. So they were able to kind of skate by and get into and sneak into the play-in because they could have got the 10th seed if all hell broke loose and their schedule was legit. So I don't know. And AD, he was injured. Like I know the difference between being hurt and being injured.
He was injured.
But
he would have played hurt.
Is this a thing though now? Because he was hurt again. Is this becoming an issue with him being just injury prone?
I think so. I think you got to put him in the same Porzingis boat. Where you can't depend on him for 72 games, let alone 82 game schedule in the playoffs. You just never know. And I feel like we said again, the Lakers did not address their big situation. They kind of took a downgrade away from McGee and Howard, where they got slower and bigger, not in the right sense, but that's what happened. And who would have helped the Lakers in this round? It would have been Randall. It would have been Clarkson. It would have been all those young pieces that the Lakers had that they gave away for AD would have helped them in this series.
I know. It was just funny to see, and LeBron kind of walked to the court early, and I know people gave him shit for that, and it was just funny to watch. I recorded the last quarter because I had to go to sleep. I had to work today, so I watched it today.
The same thing happened to me. I saw the blow up, and then I kind of got tired, and then when I woke up, I was like, okay, just make sure that they didn't blow that lead.
Just make sure, like, all right, okay, win this plan. Got it. So there's one series in the first round still going on. That's happening tonight. Game 6, Mavs Clippers. Mavs up 3-2. Will the Mavs finish off the Clippers tonight?
I think not. I think the Clippers know that they're a little bit better than the Mavs. They see the Lakers is out of here. It's a clear path for them to make it to the finals. Like whoever wins this game, I have them going to the Western Conference Finals. If it's the Clippers, I think they're going to the finals.
So you think the Clippers, with all the shit we've talked about the Clippers, if they get past the Mavericks,
they go to the finals.
They get to the finals. Wow. You heard that here. By the way, I forgot to mention, I called the Lakers series. I'm just saying. I got it right this time. I'm putting it out there. I got it right. Just saying. Put it out there in the ether. somewhere in my head, I really think that Game 5 might mess the Clippers a little bit because down the stretch they played like shit.
Yeah,
that air ball Kawhi shot, I was like, ooh, damn. I really do feel like they're in their own heads. I think Emmanuel Achu said this on Fox on FS1. They're kind of playing two games right now. They're playing a game on the court, but they're also playing a game in their head. And I think they're a little bit in their head. And I feel like the Mavs jump out to a lead. Even though I know the Clippers came back from the lead in game 2, I believe. If the Mavs jump out to a lead, 10, 15 points, I'm not sure if the Clippers can get back into it because I really do think they're in their own heads right now.
Well, as long as Kawhi and Paul George don't play iso ball, they should be fine. But you're right. They're definitely in their heads. But this is where Rondo, I want to see more Rondo and less Patrick Beverly tonight.
Yeah, I don't understand what they're doing with Rondo. I don't understand why. I know it's Patrick Beverly. Patrick Beverly's a good player. I get it. But you got Rondo for this reason. You got Rondo to be in this situation. Why are you not playing him? Why can't – and I know it's a weird lineup if you go Rondo, Beverly, Kawhi, George, insert fifth guy here. Why not try that? Because, one, you get Rondo on the court, you keep the defensive presence of Beverly, but then you still got your main two guys. I don't understand why you wouldn't even try that.
I'm surprised they won't even go that route, but we'll see what happens. This game is win or go home, so you can expect everyone's on a short leash tonight.
Every other series, we're going into the conference semifinals. We're going to start, obviously, Nets Bucks. That is game 1 on Saturday night in Brooklyn. Listen, I think the consensus is split on this series. I think people half think Milwaukee's got it, half think the Nets have it. I'm kind of on the side of Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee, and it goes back to what I said a few weeks ago when they had those 2 back-to-back games, Milwaukee beat them. I think Milwaukee might have figured out how to beat the team. Now, mind you, they were missing all 3 guys. They were missing like 1 of the 3, I think. I think Milwaukee has the weapons now. And I think the Drew Holiday addition is actually going to help them a lot in this series. I think Milwaukee beats the Nets in 7.
I'm going with the Nets because I'm not a Milwaukee fan.
Mm-hmm. I know.
It dawned on me last night when I went to the Liberty game. I was like, wow, it really takes me 15 minutes on a train to get home from Barclays. So I'm like, I feel like most New Yorkers, we need to embrace the Nets. It's the closest thing to a championship we're gonna see if it happens. So I definitely think, and I just think the three-headed monster, and not in the. A lot of people think it's just a big 3. It's not. I think people sleep on Harris. People sleep on the bench is deep. It's just not long. But I think they can find a way. I think Griffin's a big body. He's not as tall as Giannis, but he's definitely going to keep Lopez out the paint. If you let Giannis go off and you contain everyone else, you'll be fine. And I think KD is going to have a big series. I think it's really Harden. Harden, to me, this it's going to be about Harden and it's going to be about Blake. If Blake can control the paint and Harden does his thing, I think that's winning 7. I think it's definitely going 7 games. This might be a home series where like a home team win all the games.
Well, what's funny is, and I know Jeff Green, he's out for game 1 tomorrow, so he's not playing tomorrow. Jeff Green and I think KD played a lot of center against Boston. I think against Milwaukee, that may not work. I think an X factor in this series could be Bobby Portis. I feel like Bobby Portis, coming off the bench, who can, 1, stretch the floor, and 2, get physical. He's not like Brook Lopez who's going to stand out behind the arc and just wait for a pass. I think Bobby Portis can post you up, grab rebounds. The one thing the Nets can't do, grab rebounds. I really do feel like the size of Milwaukee might actually come back to bite. Not just size. I think size and athleticism of Milwaukee might come back and hurt Brooklyn a little bit. I think Bobby Portis could be an X factor where he might usurp Brook Lopez minute-wise, and they might go, he can stretch the floor. He's a little bit more athletic than Brook Lopez, and he can kind of bang down low, which you almost want. You want when Kyrie drives the basket, when Harden decides to drive the basket, doesn't do it very often. When KD drives, you want someone down low. And I think that guy can be Bobby Portis to kind of create that inside presence that Boston definitely didn't have against Milwaukee against Brooklyn first round.
Not at all. But I think the Nets. I think the Nets big three is gonna. That's a lot of points right there. That's a lot of points. If they average anywhere between the 85 and 90 points that they can easily put up, it's gonna be tough for Milwaukee to keep up.
Shout out to Xavier who's listening. Very true, but his downfall is big pressure situations. He's easy to fluster as well. I agree with that. So I think this is going 7. I really do think that Milwaukee's gonna pull this out. I also think, listen, we talk about the defense. I think the defense of Brooklyn becomes an issue for this series too. Can they turn it on? Because listen, they said, we can turn it on and off. Now you got to do it now. Boston was a walkthrough. I'm sorry. Boston, you gave Boston one game in that series. You can't do that against Milwaukee. Now, turning it on and off, that sounds good against Milwaukee, against Boston, but you can't do that against Milwaukee and the better teams in the Eastern Conference. So defense is going to play a huge role in the series.
I agree. But one more thing. I think the winner of this series is winning the championship, by the way.
Wait, what? Really?
I think the winner of this series is winning the
So
championship.
Milwaukee wins the series, they win the championship.
Yep.
Ooh, and you hate Milwaukee. That's weird. You can't stand them.
I feel like Embiid's damaged goods once again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they get past the Hawks right now without Embiid. And the Hawks will match up terrible against both the Bucks and the Nets. And I have no faith in the teams out in the West. I think they're all flawed, and winner of the series is win the championship.
Well, good segue into the next series, 76ers Hawks. That game 1 is on Sunday in Philadelphia. Listen, the Hawks made in second round. Kudos to them. I'm gonna say it. Fuck Trae Young. So like you said, I think if Embiid's out, it becomes a different series. Mm-hmm. If Embiid's in, Embiid's gonna eat against Atlanta. I haven't really seen anything or heard anything. I think he might be questionable. I think he might. I mean, Joel Embiid's going to try to play.
He has a slight meniscus tear, so he's probably doubtful for game 1. Depending how the series goes, he'll probably play. But I don't know if that's something you need to rush him. I think game 1 you could just feel out the Hawks. You don't need to throw him out there just yet.
Well, I think without Embiid, I feel like it becomes more of a focus on a shooting. It becomes a shooting competition,
right?
Because really, Atlanta really doesn't have an inside presence. I know John Collins is a big dude, but John Collins steps out a lot. Mm-hmm. Without Embiid, Philly loses their inside presence. So it becomes a shooting contest. And if it becomes a shooting contest, Atlanta wins. Which begs the question, what happens to Ben Simmons if it becomes a shooting contest?
Well, with Ben, he's just going to have to post up. He's going to be a playmaker and post up and be a decoy.
All right, Xavier Phillips. With Embiid, Sixers in 6. So with them in 6, you didn't say without him. I don't know. Without becomes a whole different series. Are there any players you're looking at in this series besides Ben Simmons? I think Ben Simmons is a huge, huge question mark in this series.
I think without Embiid, I think Seth Curry's gonna have to step up, and I think Harris. I think Tobias gonna have that big series, but I expect the Hawks' backcourt is lethal. It's damn near Clay and Curry all over again. So I would watch out for that backcourt.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, and I think Trae Young proved this against the Knicks, Trae Young's going to get his points. Trae Young's going to get his. Trae Young's going to do his work. You have to shut everybody else down. Unfortunately, without Embiid for game 1, most likely, that lane's going to be wide open. That's going to be an issue. So I feel like Trae's just going to drive to the basket. Now you got to be ready for kickouts, because if you kind of crowd him in and kind of collapse him, he's going to kick it out. You have to be ready to go out there and help on those kickouts. If you can do that and hold everybody else at arm's length, you win this series. But Embiid has to play. I know he probably misses game 1, but they need him to win this series, because Atlanta will go mess around and win this series if Embiid misses, the first 2 or 3 games of the series.
Because I don't think Dwight can hold Capella. I don't think that time is passed.
Dwight could barely hold me at this point in his career. But he lucky he played in the West against a bunch of soft centers last year. No. The other series that starts is on Monday with the victorious Phoenix Suns and Denver Nuggets, game 1 Monday in Phoenix. How good is Devin Booker? I know we talked about him in the bubble last year. Did Devin Booker cement his status as one of the top young players in the league in the last 2 games against the Lakers?
Absolutely. Booker never had the help, and he didn't have a veteran point guard as he did now. So I definitely think Phoenix is definitely on the rise. I do have a problem against Denver. I don't know if they match up well in terms of the Jokic in the middle. I think that's a bad matchup for them. I think Michael Porter Jr. is coming around. I think Denver is going to take the Suns in 6 games. Early prediction.
Okay. See, Dame Lillard said last night, and we'll talk about him in a second, about how the Blazers couldn't even get past them without Will Barton and without Jamal Murray. I feel like at some point, Austin Rivers is not going to win you a game. Like it ain't happening. Austin Rivers,
he's a good complimentary player. He's showing his work.
Yeah, Rivers had some big shots last night. I don't see these. I think the injuries are going to catch up to them here. And there's a headline actually on NBA.com. Will Nuggets injuries finally catch up? I think they are. I really do think Jokic kind of held it down against Portland. He's been holding it down for about a month. At some point, my dude gets tired. At some point, my dude's going to have to kind of he's going to need a little more help. That game last night, Portland blew that game. In all honesty, in all legit, Portland blew that game. It was no ifs, ands, or buts. Jokic can't keep this up. He's at a pace where it's impossible for him to keep this going. And I feel like they don't have the horses right now to beat Phoenix. Phoenix just beat the Lakers in the first round. They're coming in this series like we could beat anybody. And I think that's dangerous.
I see your point, but I just have a feeling that, Denver's going to hold it down and they're going to steal one. They're going to steal game 1 or game 2. I'm leaning towards game 2, but I think Jokic is going to have a dominant series because I don't think their bigs can keep up with him. And if they have to double team him, he's going to have some guys. He's going to have the shooters open. And Austin proved that he can hit some shots. I still have faith in Michael Porter Jr., and I just feel like their bench, is battle tested. I didn't think they were going to beat Portland, but they beat Portland, and they beat them handily in 6. I was surprised about that.
Well, talking about Phoenix, we talk about how DeAndre Ayton had to kind of make a major impact in the playoffs and kind of make people speak his name again. I feel like DeAndre Ayton kind of became this kind of like Voldemort. No one ever said his name. No one wanted to say his name. I feel like DeAndre Ayton kind of proved against the Lakers that, okay, he has that game. And listen, he may not score 30 points a game, but he's going to play defense, which I think that's Monty Williams' impact right there. And he's going to rebound. Now, can he stop Jokic? No, but I do think he can still have an impact in this series.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough job for him, at least with the Lakers bigs, AD's not as aggressive on the boards like Jokic, so it's going to be a different task for him.
Yeah, there's a matchup that's talking about NBA.com, Mikal Bridges versus Michael Porter. I think that would be the matchup to watch too, because Mikal Bridges is a good shooter. He's 3-and-D. We talk about 3-and-D guys. He's the prototypical 3-and-D type player like Reggie Bullock. Against Michael Porter, I think you put him on Porter, you put him on Austin Rivers, that'll be an interesting matchup because you need a stopper, and Bridges seems to be Phoenix's stopper when they need someone, along with obviously, Jay Crowder, shout out Jay Crowder, to stop guys. And I think with those two guys playing defense, trying to take some of these guards and these kind of swing guys out the way, that might make life a little bit more difficult for Denver as well.
Agreed. But, I still, wouldn't it have been, how nice would it have been if we could look back in retrospective that, we should have took Michael Porter Jr. and redshirted him a year if we had patience.
Yeah.
Looking back, if we didn't, if we had the patience. We didn't have patience back then. Had it been now.
I have a lot of listen, I look at him, I'm still like, hey, he's not there yet. But he's getting there. He's close. He's really, really close. But yeah, I know. We can't talk about Nick draft picks anymore because I get more and more depressed by the day as I look at some of these players. And I'm like, yeah, that could have been us. Oh yeah, that could have been us too. Oh yeah, that could have been our guy. Yeah, that could have been us too. So those are the playoff matchups. Game 6 tonight, Dallas Clippers in Dallas. That starts at 9:00 after the show's over. So tune that in. I think that's on ESPN. So let's check that out. You covered your first 2 WNBA Liberty games.
Yeah.
Tell me what you saw.
I definitely see a learning curve happening with the Liberty. I see why they moved off of Kia Nurse. They have the rookies are nice. They're good shooters, and the veterans. It's a nice mix of veterans and youth. However, that size is a problem, and Stokes cannot catch the ball in the paint for nothing. She's become a liability, and you should have heard the people around me. They were like all saying the same thing, like she can't catch anything. Why is she still a Liberty? Yada yada yada. But to me, it was when I watched, especially the last game, when I watched what Liz Cambridge and what AJ Wilson did to them. Wow. I mean, just talk about barbecue chicken. It was bad. And when you see them up close, it was really bad. Like, the Liberty are coming up. They're learning. They're coming up. I like the head coach. I like the technical he called at the end of the game because they was definitely not getting a lot of calls. And it's going to be a good season. They have a learning curve. And, I don't know if they're ready for the big boys yet, the big girls yet.
Yeah, AJ Wilson had 30 points and 13 rebounds in their game on, was that Tuesday? Was that Tuesday night? Tuesday night. Liz Cambridge had 12 points, 6 rebounds. I think I texted you. The fatal flaw of the Liberty seemed to be their front court. All right, you talk about Kia Stokes. Kylie Shook, second-year player. She's okay. She has some good range. She can step out, but she's not really any good. Guard-wise, I think they're good. I think the rookie they drafted, Michaela from UCLA, I don't pronounce her name, so I'm going to butcher it because it's
that's why I stayed away from saying her name too.
I know she had 29 last weekend and when they lost to Chicago. I think, and that was a pick that I didn't want because I wanted Ariella Grantes from Rutgers. I think she adds a dimension to this team at the power forward spot where it adds another shooter to give Sabrina Ionescu another person to pass the ball to. Ionescu was struggling.
And to be fair with her, she was definitely passing first. So the 2 games I saw her up live, I was like, wow, she's not really looking for a shot unless she has to, which is what you want for your point guard.
Which is weird because she had 20 plus points, I think the first two games.
First 2 games, yeah.
And then I know she had 9 assists against the Aces on Tuesday, but it seemed like she's just like, no, I'm going to throw this off real fast. I don't get it. Benicia Laney also 23 points against the Aces. I think they have a star in her. It's a balanced team, but I feel like they're still trying to figure out, and this goes back to when you make all these moves in one fell swoop. It seemed like in one day they got rid of 2 players and picked up 4. I feel like when you had a team that was young and you were learning that in the Wubble last year, you're kind of blowing it up a little bit, even though you have a lot of the same players from last year. Your main 2 people you had last year aren't there anymore. So you're kind of starting from scratch with these new players and trying to merge them in, and they're vets that came in. And trying to merge these vets with these young players. You may not have a feel about what this team really is and what the philosophy is probably until midseason.
Yeah. And by then we got the Olympic break and everything else, and so that's going to delay that a little bit too.
Yeah, it was just odd how that all kind of happened, and just I don't think they really looked ahead at like, hey, we probably shouldn't do this right now. Right now, there are some games going on right now. We got the Dream up on the Lynx 30-27, and later tonight we have the Wings going to see the Seattle Storm, who I think might be the best team in the league right now. Not just based on standings, but just in general. I think they're the best team in the WNBA. They're 6-1. Connecticut 7-2. Ace is 6-3. The Liberty at number 6 in the league, 5-3. So the playoffs start today. They will actually make it. So they make it back to the playoffs. Do you agree? Is Seattle the best team in the WNBA right now?
I think so. I think head and shoulders they're better than everyone else right now, and probably going to be that way for the rest of the season. I think they're going to coast them their way to the playoffs, and we'll see what happens there.
So you saw the Sky. I think your first game was against the Sky. They're 2-6. There was a lot of high hopes with Candace Parker going back home. Something's not working. It may not be her, but something ain't working.
It seems very Dwayne Wade back to Chicago-ish, where it's just not clicking right away. But it's definitely not her. And, it's going to be a rough season for the Sky.
And for the Mystics, I know last week I was singing the praises of Tina Charles. She had her a couple games, and it's back to normal again. And they can't get it right. The Aces seem to be the team to look out for because I think their size kind of trumps everybody else in the entire league. So I think that's going to be a problem for them.
Yep, I agree.
So it's going to be interesting. You know, when the next game you cover is when?
The 22nd, I believe, is against is it the Sky? It could be the Sky again.
Again, okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully they win that game because the Sky could probably go winless for the rest of the season the way they've been playing. But then they beat them. I'm like, damn, what happened? But it was an overtime game. I know it was crazy. It was craziness. So I want to talk about Coach K retiring. I think that's going to be a big topic. And, you know, what were your first thoughts when you heard him announce that I'm not coming back? This is it in the last year. And that's it.
I thought it was like, I didn't believe it, but then I was like, you know what? That's probably the best way for Coach K to go out, a victory tour. You know, I'm surprised Roy Williams didn't want that. I'm surprised he abruptly was like, I'm done. But Coach K definitely deserves his laps and his flowers while he gets it. I don't know where Duke as a program goes from here. I think they're in good hands from what I'm hearing of who his successor is, but you never can tell.
John Shire.
Yeah. I mean, not heard much about him. I mean, in terms of Hubert Davis, we know he put in that work before he went back to North Carolina, and now
apparently Shire was the one who helped recruit Zion, and there's another name. There's another name I can't remember off the top of my head. So he was the main guys. He was one of their best recruiters, but he just kind of got there.
Right.
I know they spoke to Tommy Amaker, who's still at Harvard. He spoke to a couple other coaches, but they figured Shire's here. Let's just keep it in house. Let's not go out of house and bring in an old Duke guy. Let's keep it in. So I guess it makes sense.
We'll see how it works out next year.
Well, there's a clip of his press conference I'm going to play, and it pretty much he explains why he's quitting. But I want you to notice. I'm going to ask you when we're done if you notice something weird. This is about a 1-minute clip of like a 15-minute press conference, but I'm going to ask you a question. If you notice something weird in this 1-minute explanation of why he's quitting now. So here's Coach K at his retirement press conference.
You might ask, why are you doing this right now? Look, this is not about health. Mickey and I, whether we look like she does, whether I look healthy, I am. It's not about COVID or saying, boy, that year was so bad. It's not about that. It's certainly not about what's going on with college basketball, where, boy, the game's changing. All right, I've been in it for 46 years. You mean the game's never changed? You know, in the progression of the game, we have always had to adapt to the changes in culture, to the changes in rules, the changes in the world. We're going through one right now. That's not the reason. Those aren't the reasons.
What did you notice in that little 1-minute excerpt about what like his reasons for leaving? Did you notice anything weird?
That whole thing was kind of weird. It sounds like, it's not because, COVID and not because, we had a horrible year last year that I want to bail ship and I want to jump ship down. My health is fine, I can coach 5 more years, but no, I don't want to. It sounds like, not saying forces being pushed out a little bit, but it's definitely like somebody up in the dean probably asking like, hey, so coach, how much more time you got left here? Like, what's going on here? So it seems like, someone's kind of nudging him a little bit, and doesn't sound too good. I don't think it's going to be a good year for Duke anyway, but this definitely now puts an exclamation point on it.
Well, and if you notice, he spent more time on the last part about how the game is changing.
Yep.
And I think deep down, he knows what's up the pike going forward. Players getting paid for likeness. That transfer portal.
He don't want to be nowhere near
that transfer portal is fucking bananas right now. And guys and players in college a lot more empowered and kind of feeling themselves for good reason. because they know they hold the cards. So the players are like, we hold the cards here. We don't play, you don't make money. NCAA, coaches, schools, whoever. And I feel like that change really started last year. And then he had COVID.
Yep.
I think that played a role in it. I think he sees what's about to happen, and he's like, I'm out.
He's not Calipari. Well, Calipari is going to try to adapt and see what he can do because he feels like he's already a leg up on everything. So I think you're right. I think Coach K sees the writing on the wall. He's like, yeah, I don't want no parts of this. I'm out before this shit hits the fan.
Well, and Coach K kind of succumbed to the one and done. He was never a one and done guy.
He was against it.
Mm-hmm. And he coached like, oh, I'll do it, and he did it. And he's just as good as Calipari at it now. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it was going to get worse and worse, and paying players, and that bill coming through. I think July 1st, a lot of states that they're like the individual states, those bills actually take effect in July, next month. Wow. So he knows the Supreme Court heard a case, and there's like legislation now in Congress about it. So I feel like he doesn't want to deal with that, and he knows what's about to happen, and players and Duke in general. I feel like Duke really doesn't have that cachet it had when you and I were younger.
No, not at all, because it had that gap, and then I feel like even North Carolina doesn't have that cachet anymore. I feel like if anything, Villanova should have it. If not Villanova, maybe Kentucky doesn't have it either. I feel like now it's such a floodgate. It's wide open. College basketball is not where it's in better hands now that there's so much parity. And now when you put money and making money off of likenesses on top of that parity, I don't know how the true blues are gonna blue bloods are gonna survive that.
No, I mean you have I feel like Duke's kind of gone down. You said North Carolina. I think Kentucky. I think Calipari's having a hard time getting guys to come to Kentucky because there's other options. Those guys that used to go to Kentucky, they're going to play for Ignite now.
Yep.
And they're like, we don't need you no more. We'll go play in Australia for a year, get our weight up, play against some grown men, and call it a day. So it's going to be interesting to see if Duke kind of holds anything together. Like you said, I think Duke is going to have a down year. They're going to make the bubble. They're going to be a bubble team. They're going to make it because NCAA is going to be, we got to give Duke one more ride.
We got to give Coach K, we got to send them off the right way.
Yeah, we can't put him in the damn collegeinsider.com tournament for his final season. I want to pivot back to basketball because I want to talk about the Boston Celtics. Ooh. And I say that for last. I think that's the biggest story of the whole week. Danny Ainge resigned, retired, fired. I don't know. Brad Stevens takes over as head of basketball operations. They're going to find a coach. They're looking for a coach now. The Ainge era, and we could say this because we talk about it all the time. I feel like Ainge lived off that Brooklyn trade for years. And
look what was his undoing.
Yeah, I think finally that goodwill over that trade and how crazy it was that he got it done has worn off. And the ultimate hoarder, like you say, he just held on and held on and held on. Didn't get Tatum and Brown any help. Went into that Brooklyn series looking crazy with Peyton Pritchard getting crazy minutes. But I also don't think Brad Stevens is the head of basketball operations type dude. Like, what do you think about this move?
Yeah, I'm not mad that they and I kind of get it. A lot of people try to put race and all this. It's nothing to do with race. It's about him being a great basketball mind, and they didn't want to lose him. So they brought him upstairs. They say, okay, you're a little burnt out. Come upstairs, come run, come accept this new challenge, and I think he's going to do fine in the new position that he's in. Whereas Ainge probably, he's tired of hoarding, he's burnt out. He tried to make all the right moves, and nothing panned out. He got lucky because the Nets gave him pretty much Tatum and Brown, and after that was it. He didn't do anything else to make that situation. No, you know what? I can't even say he didn't make. He did get Kyrie. That didn't help out much. I felt like it was just a bunch of bad calls, and you know what? He's been around the Celtics organization for many decades, and maybe now is a good time to retire. Coaching wise, I like to see Kidd become the coach.
There's no way. Brad Stevens will hire Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd would have to take his job in the first 2 months. We know what happened. You know what happened in Brooklyn. Jason Kidd, he ain't doing a good job right now. I can do this job too. Well, they're talking about keeping it, kind of like the Duke situation, keeping it in the family. on having Jay Larinaga, who's his assistant coach, become head coach. Shout out to Larinaga family. I'm friends with like his cousin. I play golf with him, so
Nice.
shout out to Larinaga family. I don't know. I feel like, Jason Kidd. I know Bill Simmons mentioned Mark Jackson, and I'm listening to that on the train ride, and I heard the name Mark Jackson for the Celtics, and I audibly laughed out loud and had people look at me. I was like, "Ain't no way." I just think they have a lot of decisions to make. And I'm not sure if they can really make those decisions because there's really no one like Marcus Smart. You can trade him, but what are you really going to get back for him? What are you going to get back for anyone? The only people of value on that team is Tatum and Brown, and you're not trading them. So what can you really do with that roster?
And what would that look like if the coach who coached them for the last few years is the one training them now? That looks bad.
Yeah, I don't get the move. Like you said, keep it in house. Bring them upstairs. But also Ainge, apparently, also on Bill Simmons, Utah. He's good friends with the Utah owners, the new owners. And he has some other hookups in Portland just in case if Neil O'Shea decides to leave Portland. So Danny Ainge may not be done completely in the NBA. He might move on to a different team.
Oh, boy. I can unfortunately see that.
Yeah, great. Awesome. All right, last few minutes of the show. WWE fired more people.
I was shocked by 2 names.
Was Braun Strowman one of them?
That was very shocking because this man was just main eventing your last pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Well, he shocked me, and Lana kind of surprised me.
Lana made sense. She was borrowed time. She's gonna go team up with Miro.
I don't. I know Dave Meltzer said that. He's like, I know it's going to look like, they're just kind of retreading old act. But I feel like that's when they were most successful, Miro and her. Yeah. So I feel like you almost have to put them back together and just have like that killer with his mouthpiece. I feel like you need that. But Miro's promos are amazing now. So I'm like, I don't really want him to not talk. Aleister Black, I was happy with because I'm like, they just screwed him around. They let his wife go, kept him home for 7 months for no reason, brought him back, started a feud with Big E, and now it doesn't even happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for Big E now.
And I heard Strowman has something to do with like Vince sees no purpose for him anymore because you have new giants in Omos and the guy who's with
General Aziz.
Yeah, because of those. Which kind of makes sense. WWE was never a place where you had multiple big men at the same time.
Well, the idea was there's like, well, they would want to have Omos beat Braun Strowman and kind of have Strowman put him over. But they said, one, when people saw the height disparity between Omos and Strowman, they were like, yeah, Strowman's going to get his ass kicked. Plus, two, they said that match would have been god awful, which I agree with. That match was terrible. But they said he was 2 years past his prime, which I'm like, did he just main event a pay-per-view?
But it's kind of true because even though he won in the bubble, the crowd WrestleMania last year, that was like him getting the title 2 years too late. So I kind of agree with that assessment.
Yeah, I'm of the idea that this whole budget cut thing, they need to stop saying that because we know it's not budget cuts. You made $600 million last year, last quarter. Fuck that, last quarter. But now you're just cutting. And listen, this is the sale conversation. They're cutting a lot of salary, but I think Strowman's making $1 million,
which is crazy.
I mean, for him making, like AJ should be making $1 million, not Strowman. They're kind of cutting fat, and they kind of streamlining things. They sold the network to Peacock. It does seem like they're setting up for a sale.
But who's buying? Khan?
I mean, his dad has the money. I mean, I think NBC Universal, that relationship with them. Disney was a name I heard through the grapevine.
We'll never see blood again.
No blood.
They'll edit more stuff out of the network. Like
Mandy Rose.
I can't even see the the Nation skit by DX. It's not on the network anymore.
Still hilarious, by the way.
I gotta go to YouTube for that.
Mandy Rose being a burqa wrestling. It ain't happening anymore.
It's PG.
But it just seemed that and here's my problem. Has AEW comes on tonight at 10 o'clock. I'm afraid AEW's like, yes, we're going to get some guys, and they're going to just overbloat. You got Mark Henry, and I'm like, okay, if he's there for analysts and he's there for coach, good. He should not wrestle. Don't let that man wrestle. Don't let him talk you into it. I feel like when he start bringing all these guys in, you just got Christian, you got the Big Show now, you got Mark Henry. You know one of these guys is going to get picked up. If you pick up one, you pick up Aleister Black. That's it.
Well, to be fair, the thing didn't look that bad last week. He didn't look that bad.
I guess. I mean, I don't want. You're already hearing like the TNA 2.0 comparison for AEW, and I feel like I hear that and I get pissed. I'm like, it kind of feels that way because you're getting, and like they're pushing Jungle Boy. Britt Baker won her title. I think Wardlow's gonna be champion in like a year. Okay. So they're kind of doing it, but they're doing it using like Sting's helping Darby Allin get over. You know, Miro. I don't think Miro was ever a WWE guy in the first place. I think he's kind of restarted his whole career. No. I just have an issue with them getting all these WWE guys and just infiltrating the company with WWE guys and leaving the other guys behind.
Yeah, I agree.
And well, like Cody Rhodes.
Aleister Black would be a perfect addition. If you want to restart the Dark Order, there you go.
And Cody Rhodes, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what his vision is, but I'm tired of him. I'm done. He needs to go away.
I love the Homelander outfit that he came out with. It's great.
And his civil rights promo he cut 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'm like, is Cody trying to end racism on AEW? Because that's the case. That's great.
He's trying.
That's great if he is. Jason's always great show, bro.
Likewise.
So podcast out tomorrow. We'll be back next Thursday night. Hopefully the Bucks are up. Let's go Milwaukee. And hopefully the Clippers get knocked out because I want to hear some Kawhi hate tomorrow. I want to wake up to that in the morning. I'm ready for that for my farmer's market trip. I want to hear some Kawhi hate on the radio. So we'll be back next Thursday night, 8 p.m. here on Just Hoop Talk YouTube channel. For Jason Cordner, I'm Kahlil Thomas. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening on the podcast. We will see you on Thursday, 8 p.m. Peace.
Peace.